Welcome to the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, Roach Growth listeners. Today I have Michael Hopf, or J. Michael Hopf, or Michael Hopf, or Mr. Hopf, whatever you want to call it.
G. Michael Hopf. The G stands for Jeff. Yeah.
Oh, Jeff. Okay. So I was saying it wrong. G. Hopf. Okay, sorry about that.
Well, I've dealt with that all my life. It's okay. I know. It's the English or Old English way of spelling Jeff. So.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So, how Jeff was your, I'm guessing, given name, right?
Yes, and that's what I go by. I use G. Michael as a brand for all the authors and all the writing and all my businesses that are set up around that brand. There's a story behind that, and I can dive into that. But it goes, if you want, I can dive. That's my brand name. I go by Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, people that listen to the podcast, my given name is Vicente, but I'm in the real estate field. I've been in the field for 13 years, and so I always go by Vinny, just because everyone starts speaking Spanish to me, and I go, I don't know. And so I think I'm Italian, so it makes life really easy. So I'm curious your story right there of why you go by G. Michael Hall.
Yeah, and by the way, how I am with anyone that has the Vincent, I just always naturally start calling people Vinny anyway. It's I think Vinny is like a nice, endearing kind of way of kind of shortening the name, and plus I always like nicknames anyway. I think nicknames are it's a sign of endearment, really, in a lot of ways. When you give someone a nickname like that, hey, yo, Vinny, you're showing them, and just by doing that you like them, and you're kind of in your own way. So the G. Michael comes from my very, very, very first book. Was a children's illustrated book that I did in 2011, and I wrote that under Jeffrey Hopf.
Okay.
And then the book did okay. I mean, I managed to get all my money back because I hustled. And then I had the idea to do a novel. And then I was like, well, I don't want to do the novel under Jeffrey Hopf because it's going to be a post-apocalyptic fiction, which it can be really gritty and raw and violent. And I didn't want them connected in some way, because I had at the time this vision of doing more children's books, which I never did. But I wanted to then create two brands: Jeffrey Hopf, the children's illustrated author, and then G. Michael Hopf. I wanted to do something to differentiate, which is the novelist. And so that's how G. Michael Hopf was born. And it is what it is. I know it's confusing. That's why I tell people, I coach them and say, be careful what your pen name is, because it can be a little confusing if you become very prominent. It can be very, very confusing to try to understand. Because I go by Jeff. That's what I go by. And that's what the G stands for. So
do you still do that, where you have both pen names still?
Oh yeah. So yeah, I still, when I write, my brand is G. Michael Hopf. I'm known for that. I've sold closing on 2 million copies of my books.
Yeah.
Combined. I've got 2 publishing companies. I've got other companies, and that's my brand. So I've got the novelist that kind of stands at the epicenter of my world. And then I have all these adjacent companies that are all kind of tied into that world: publishing companies, content farms, translation, something new that we've gotten into, getting into YouTube and creating kind of faceless channels. So there's a bunch of different content, but it all really revolves around, again, that the center of that solar system is the G. Michael Hopf brand, which is me as a novelist and 40 books in.
Do you, because it's something that I do, based off of what someone calls me, it gives me a quick, because I meet a lot of people in my profession, and my memory is probably not the best, right? I live in DI with CRM, but when I hear what they call me, I kind of go, and if we've met in the past, I go, okay, this is probably where I met them in my life, or this is how I try to know them. Does that kind of come across with you when you meet random people?
Yeah, if people, I've told them I'm a novelist. It's happened, here and there. I go, yeah, I run under G. Oh, you're Michael Hopf. Yeah, that means that they've read the books. They don't really know me personally, because they know me personally. Know me, I'm Jeff. Yeah. And so often people will just refer to me. And when I get emails, I can tell when someone doesn't know me, or text, they go Michael Hopf, as they're connecting to the brand and the books and the whole thing that's out there.
Gotcha. Yeah, it protects you a little bit from scammers too, right? Like you said, right, from the text messages and things like that.
Yeah, that's out there. I mean, but God, I remember the first time, speaking of scammers, is when but lots of people do copyright violations and IP theft.
Mm.
And I remember the first time one of my audiobooks was being pirated on YouTube, I instantly freaked out. And then I had a mentor at the time, Doug Richards was his name, New York Times bestseller, guy helped me out. Another great story there about why I encourage people to get mentors. Very, very valuable to have a mentor in your life. And I reached out to him. I was like, hey, someone's got my audiobook on YouTube and it's theft. They're stealing it, right? And he goes, first thing you need to think of is someone's willing to steal your stuff, you've made it. Because they don't steal books that no one's listening to. I'm like, that's a really good and very positive way to look at it. And then YouTube makes it very easy to take down those things. You just copyright strike. I proved it was mine, and that thing went away. So every 6 months we cycle through, and we look on these, video like YouTube, Rumble, and things like that, and see if my books are out there, and then copyright ding them and take them down. But again, I always like Doug's attitude. It's like, listen, they're doing it, you've made it. It's like, that's smart. I like that.
Well, talking about positivity, we were talking about before we got on mic about I guess the positivity you carry kind of was shaped when you were younger. Can you kind of talk a little more about that?
Yeah, we were talking about like one of the very first times that I think it's just kind of the beginning of your frontal cortex starting to finally develop over time. Well, and I also think it's hormones. I was in middle school, I was a really fat kid, like fat. And that's why I don't prescribe to not telling people the truth. Like, dude, you're fat, bro. You need to tighten that shit up. But
do you know like that?
What's that?
Like how tall, how fat, anything like that?
Yeah. So this was in middle school. I was probably clocking in at 5'9" at the time. I'm 6'1" now. I was like 5'9", maybe to seventh grade, maybe shorter. And I was like 190 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Like, I was a big kid, and that just came from comfort, and grandma lived next door, and my mom was really nice to me. Honey, you're just husky. That's just a nice way of saying you're fat. It's like you're big boned, those kind of things, right? So I had it all. Like, I had all these kind of warm, comforting words that were given to me. But it was like later on in middle school, in hormones, now the attraction to girls are there. That kind of things, dynamic is happening, right? And I was being teased. And I was being teased specifically from this one girl that I kind of liked, teasing me because I was fat. And I remember that hit me. And I was like, okay. And my dad never really said anything to me. My dad was always very fit his whole life and very active, and he never really put it in my face. We would drop hints by like, you want to come with me for a run? You want to do this with me? Always invited me to do things with him. And then finally I went to him and I was like, hey, Dad, I think I'll go for a run. He goes, I love that. Let's do that. And he knew what was happening. I think he kind of knew, like, I didn't like the way I looked anymore. I didn't like how I felt, how it made me feel. And so he just set things up really easily, because we're not gonna, I run 3 miles. We're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to run to that first telephone pole. And once you get to that, you go to the next. And eventually, that was the summer in between 8th and 9th grade. Because that was something too. I didn't want to go and start high school again, just this fat kid. And I knew I needed to do something about it. So I just literally made this very laser focused determination that I was going to lose the weight. And I ran every day. I watched what I ate. And that really, when I look back now, it gave me a real understanding of focus and discipline and consistency. And you put those together. I call it, we have compounding interest. You understand what that means. So now you can have compounding labor. So you do this labor every single day. There's going to be a result that's going to be at the end based upon that consistency. That's what I did. And at the end of the summer, before I started my freshman year, I'd lost 50 pounds. I was like a new person. And I went into high school, like getting attention, like people noticed me, they saw me. I wasn't the fat kid anymore. And that really changed my life. I was like, okay, I see what that does. And so I started looking at laser focus, discipline, consistency, and anything that I wanted to do. And I was seeing results. I did really, really well in high school, and everything else beyond that. That really set the tone for me.
Do you think you would have lost that weight if your dad would have forced you to run?
I don't, maybe, I can't go back and think about it. But what I liked about his approach is that it's like anything. You can tell people, but you're really never going to do it unless you really want to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
right? It's like the old adage of you can lead a horse to water kind of thing. Like how often we give advice to people and they don't take it.
Yeah.
And the real thing is they have to feel the pain of whatever their situation is. Like, was it, there was a Tony Robbins seminar I went 2 years ago, and he talks about that, what really drives people. And pain is the greatest motivator over pleasure, right?
Yeah.
You have this dynamic of the pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain.
I say it
People
all the
will
time.
always surrender to pleasure all the time until and then the one thing that will really make you move, like shift, take massive action, is pain. If you're suffering, you're like, I don't want to suffer anymore. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want that. And then that's the great motivator that can drive and push people. Pain.
I mean, I want to say I've had about 300 some interviews, whatever, somewhere in that kind of ballpark. And it's so rare that basically that catalyst to change people to get to their success in their life is some kind of pleasure point. It's always a pain point. This happened to me. It was the worst time. It was my rock bottom. And then I knew I had to get my shit together. And then I worked my way there. It's like, I've only had a couple where they were just like, well, no, I just knew that this was where I wanted to be. And I saw someone else and I wanted to be like that person. It's for all of us, I think. Yeah.
I mean, if you just take inventory of your own life, if you really sit down and do that, you could see the moments that you made big changes, or sometimes are really, they're born out of pain. They're born out of suffering.
Oh, for sure.
And this is why I've reframed how I lived my life years ago about looking at a painful situation, getting terminated from a job or something in a relationship, that they're opportunities versus something bad. And that, all right, this is an interesting point in my life, that door's closed, but there's always open doors around you. And the thing is that people don't see the open doors because they're only staring at that door that's closed. Metaphorically, they're just staring at it. So they can't see around them. And if that door closes, if you step back away from it and realize there's an opportunity now, and you believe it, you have to believe it. And you have to have the emotional, like, I believe this is an opportunity. Something great is going to come from this. And then you'll suddenly see the opportunities around. You'll see those open doors. But you can only do it if your mind is fixated with a belief that no matter what happens, there's an opportunity for growth and learning and for elevation. Because, man, look, I'm not sure if you're religious, but, you've got, like, in Christianity, you have Jesus goes into the wilderness, right? Now, what's interesting, when he goes into the wilderness, this is before he starts his ministry. He's led there by the Holy Spirit, right? So wait a minute. So he doesn't go there because he just happenstance walks in there, or the devil takes him. None of this. The Holy Spirit takes him to the wilderness so he can suffer, right? So 40 days and 40 nights, Jesus, God, in human flesh, is suffering in the wilderness. And then there he's being tempted. Yet he keeps with comfort, with, I can take you away from this if you just do these things, the shortcut, the dopamine shortcuts. Essentially, this is how I've really looked at the story. And but he consistently says no, and he keeps leaning into his suffering with the belief of the word of God, of his Father. And he exits the wilderness leveled up. And that is when he starts his ministry. That's when the next 3 years that we know about in the Gospels is, because he leaves the wilderness, he enters it, a man, and exits it, the Son of God, the Messiah. So to me, it's an illustration that throughout life, we will also have our own points. We're in a wilderness where we're suffering, and no outside thing should tempt us to think that whether it's drugs, sex, all these other kind of pleasure points, those things aren't going to relieve that. What we need to do is lean into the suffering, look for the opportunity, look for the growth that can take us to the next level in our life. And when you do that, you then exit the wilderness and you're stronger and better than when you entered it. I think that's a wonderful story that's in the Bible. Again, if people they don't have to be a believer, but I think it's a great story that illustrates that even the Son of God suffered and was in a wilderness and got out of it. And he got out of it not by succumbing to pleasures and succumbing to these things that make you happy. He had a mission and a purpose, and that was something we can dive into too, the difference between happiness and fulfillment, and understanding what those mean and why they're different, and why you should always go for fulfillment versus happiness.
Well, I think two takeaways from basically that. are first, the first thing you talked about is you have to be open to what you're going to learn from that suffering, right? That pain, that failure, whatever it is. And then secondly, I mean, knowing how long it's going to be, just like your dad basically says, okay, we're running to that light post. All right, run to the next light post, right? Whatever it might be, right? Like we can all do, or most of us all can do one push-up, take a break, take another push-up, right? Before you know it, you've done 10 push-ups, 15 push-ups, whatever that might be, whatever your goal is, right? It's just knowing you can just do that one, that next one, the next one. So no, I totally agree. The tough part about it is when you're not looking at that bigger picture and you're just looking at that suffering, and you're going to burn up in that 40 days in that, that forest, because you're going to be like, I'm never leaving. It's going to get worse and worse. And every day is going to be that much painful. And I think with business and everything else we deal with.
Yeah, the thing about when you use the story from the Bible, we're actually just saying any. There are people just look at, if you want to use the wilderness as like a metaphor for our suffering, because we all suffer. There's not a human being that hasn't suffered or is going to suffer or in the middle of suffering. It's a part of the human condition. We're all going to have if you haven't
suffered. I mean, there was a guy that I had, and sorry to interrupt you. There's a guy that I had on the podcast where he was just like, my first 20 years of my life, or 25 or something like that, was fantastic. Everything I put money on, everything I did, I came from money. So I really had no suffering. But when that suffering actually happened, when I had a mistake, it hit me that much harder. So if you haven't truly suffered or done anything like that or assessed it, you kind of wish you had a little bit of suffering to make it easier for you later on.
Yeah, and I hope I hope he overcame that. I know I had someone close to me that had very similar story, and took his own life.
He was close to kill himself too. Yeah.
So, and this is where it's important to have people you can talk to in those moments. You have those mentors you can lean into and say, "Hey, listen, they've been there." I think a mentor. There's coaches and mentors. Yeah. But mentors tend to be someone that is a little wiser than you, more successful than you. They've been there. And so you can, they're that person you're striving to be, kind of thing in some ways. But it's important to have that you can, those moments like he had, he can say, hey, listen, what can I do? And a good mentor would kind of like take his hand, so to speak, and walk him through the process of what he needs to do. And I would always encourage people, the answers are always inside of you anyway. I mean, what I mean is you go and find it, but then you have to then take that advice and then you have to go inside in your head, in your heart, and you have to do the work. And it's through that effort that you grow and you get this great appreciation, this fulfillment. Like, I went through this tough time and I did this process that was hard. It was difficult, but now I'm over here. And you look at that and like, I'm so glad. One on the other side of you, like, I'm so glad I did that. Like that labor, that I'm glad that happened because I'm a much better person now, more well-rounded as a human.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to your story. So you're an author. Was that always aspirations to be an author, or when did that kind of first come about? I guess
started that when I was 40.
Oh wow. Okay.
I just turned 55 on Friday. Yeah, I started that like late in the game, and that's why I always tell people, like, you can start all kinds of things. No matter, if someone says I'm too old for that, well, then they're already setting up obstacles in their way, and that's a bullshit story anyway, because there are so many examples around the world of people getting started at random ages when they're older into creating content or businesses. I mean, look at Ray Kroc.
Yeah.
If you look at when Ray Kroc like took over the McDonald's franchise, turned it into a franchise, he was like in his 50s, I think.
Yeah, I think he was like 54, right?
Yeah. And so but there'll be people I've run into, they'll be 43 and like, I'm too old for that. Like, what does that even mean? I'm not saying you have to go and you're not going to go become a sprinter. But opening businesses or creating things and coming up with ideas and launching businesses, and they're never too old. You're absolutely never, ever too old to do any kind of business idea, really. It just depends on, and I can't say that it will be successful, but then in the failure is also nuggets. Like, again, that's the whole thing. There's the difference between failing and failure, right? We all fail. We're all in the process of failing, but only when you give up on the idea or adopt it that you failed, then you get the word failure. It's the past tense. And I think, I've seen people, and I always like to model successful people. Yeah, I'm sure you do as well. Like I look at what they do and I take those little nuggets that they've done and okay, they've done that. I can do that too. And one thing I've always gleaned from people is they don't look at failure as bad. They look at failure as a teacher, or failing as a teacher. Failing as a teacher. It teaches them.
I heard someone just talk about this where they're saying that you're better off failing in your project than trying to wait for the right project. So I forgot how they worded it exactly. It's so true. I mean, it's you take the chance, learn from it, and then figure out how you can do it better next time, and then do it again until you get the right product or whatever that might be.
And then there's all kinds of things you're learning in that. Again, the Thomas Edison thing is always one that always comes to mind. People talk about where he created the filament light bulb, he had failed 10,000 times. But in those 10,000 failings, he created other product lines at the same time, which he then patented and went on to use. So they weren't failures. He just learned he just created something else. It wasn't his ultimate goal, which he did eventually got to, but he did create a bunch of other things. That takes me to kind of where we're going, where we are in today's world with AI. I think people better really wrap their head around failing and understanding that the way of life is going to change dramatically. I'm really involved in AI. I've got a couple companies that are kind of into this stuff, and we're leveraging the hell out of it. But you're going to see a dynamic where you're going to see companies launch and then be obsolete in 6 months. Because that happened to me just late last year. We got into translations and for video content, translation English speaking content to Spanish.
Okay.
And for YouTube content creators, were really big ones. We'd gotten some contracts, and we were in the process of creating some AI agents. And the time we signed our contract December 17th. And then I wanted to automate the process versus kind of doing the labor intensive, like all these steps, like automate that real process so we can be creating 200 plus videos a day. And I just wanted the one client, I was like, hey, I need more transcripts, more videos. And he goes, I don't think we're going to be doing it anymore. And I was like, this happened last week. I'm like, what happened? He goes, and he sent me the link from YouTube. And I was like, well, what do you know? They're going to offer that as a feature. So all YouTube channels that are I think they're rolling it out for people more prominent before I think they roll it out to everybody.
Yeah.
But it'll be a feature you as a user, you'll be able to toggle something to a language that you want, and it'll do using AI. It'll auto translate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
So that right there, that's showing how quickly, I took an idea from listening to someone I listened to Mr. Beast on Rogan's podcast talking about one of the latest things he's been doing he's translating all of his content over to Spanish. And I was like, that's a great idea. And I jumped on it right away, launched this entity, and we were moving down the road to working with this one company out of Georgia. And we just got nuked. And I was like, okay, good. All right. Move on to something else. But that is how quickly I think things are going to be evolving in the technology space. And so people better get used to failing a lot more, because businesses are going to come and go really quickly.
So going back, I guess, to your original aspect, getting into writing a book, I'm assuming you didn't get into it to make money. It was more about this.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I kind of went over here.
And there's so much stuff that we might not even get to, but I just kind of being an author, at least, talking to other authors, they tell me that the reason why they get into it is not to make money, because they don't in their eyes, they didn't see it was a vision. They were basically artists and they had the story to tell and stuff like that. But I'm just curious, is that not the case with you? Okay, yeah. Please.
I think you're already setting yourself up. That is a comment born from a belief that you're already going to fail.
Okay.
I've always believed that. Why would I want to, unless you're genuinely because you could take any of those people and make them New York Times bestsellers, and they would celebrate and rejoice in that. Oh,
I would think so. Yeah, for sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
But so they kind of set the stage or the expectation of failure, of failing, which then they've already jumped to failure. Therefore, they water down an expectation. Like, I don't really care if it sells. Well, that I think is a bullshit answer. Like, why would you get into anything? Be like, are you getting into real estate? I don't really get into real estate to really sell homes. I just want to talk to people and right? It's like you get in to becoming an author to not just write the book, but you want as many people to read it. And so, by the way, if they didn't care about not selling, there's an option if they're self-publishing on Amazon to make it free.
Yeah.
Like, they make their book free and just hand it out to the world. Of course they do. They sell it because they do want to make money. They do want it because if they want it to reach as many people as possible, it has to sell, period. That's end of story. It's just an excuse. So I've never believed in that. I look at, I don't look at that. I only look at what I want to see. And I remember before I published my very first book, all I would see, like I would daydream about it, doing book signings, like having people around the world read the book. And I don't, people say that's manifestation and all those things, but I swear that level of visualization, which I did daily, of seeing my life transformed, seeing these things, that's all I leaned in on. I mean, my first book, The End, is what took off. It took off quickly. Like, I never sat there and I never say those words to myself. I just don't, I think it's negative. And I think it's important that if you want something, you should see yourself successful doing that. And you visualize yourself, like you would see yourself going around and selling homes, contracts flooding in, listings coming in, that's all you see. And money exchanged, that kind of thing. People happy because you're providing value to them and now they're in a home. Like, that's the only thing I would never see not getting a listing or not making any money. Only see what you want to see is what my adage is. And so when I got into it, I first got into it because I wanted to, there was a book that I thought was missing. There's one, I was really a big reader at the time, and I couldn't find this one apocalyptic book. So I just said, well, based on the fact I'd done a children's book, it's like, well, how different is a novel? And it's like, there's one book I really wanted to see. So I was like, well, if I can't find it, why not just write it? And so I set about to writing it. But then once I get writing it, and now I'm involved, and I'm like, okay, and I'm a writer, and I always looked at myself that way. I'm an author, and it's a concept of becoming or being. Like, I am an author. If I'm sitting here late at night writing, I'm an author. That's what authors do. And you do all the other things that authors do. Just like if you're a realtor or a broker, you do all the things that brokers and realtors do. You don't think about maybe doing it, or you're going to do it at a later date. You do it now, no matter what. And so I just set about just doing it, only saw what I wanted to see. And it came out, and was it August 13th of 2013? I'm sorry, April 5th of 2013. 10 days later, it took off, and I never looked back.
Oh, wow. So the original aspirations were either a book that's missing, you had this idea, wrote the book, and just kind of jumped fully into it.
And I always give that advice to people. If you're writing a book, write the book that you want to read. You are the primary first reader of that book.
Yeah.
And know this, that whatever book you're writing that you like and you want to read, there are naturally an audience for that.
Yeah.
You're never going to write a book that everyone's going to love anyway. So that's never going to happen. So just remove that bullshit story out of your head. But I guarantee this, there is an audience. I don't know how big or how small, but there's an audience for the book that you want to write. So just start with you as the first reader, satisfy yourself, have that be the true intention. And because then you'll get into a flow state when you write, then the story will be authentic and real and flow and you can tell it. You won't run into issues like writer's block, because just write the story that you want to write.
That's great advice. We're basically close to the end of the line. Thank you, Michael, for being here today. First off, if someone's looking at your book, looking at publishing, find out all your new companies, what's the best way of them kind of staying in tune with what you're doing?
Yeah, so the best way is go to my website at gmichaelhopf.com, and there they can contact me. I do read all my emails, and I do reply to them. But yeah, if people need advice on writing, I'm always here to help writers. I've been helped out. I also do provide consulting as well. I take on a couple clients a month and take them from concept to publication and beyond. Like essentially, I know how to produce books. That's what I do. We've got companies. We've produced 260 last year, but 467 as of today. I'm looking at my board over there. We've put out. So I know how to produce books. I know how to write books. I know how to market books. So that's something I do offer people as well. But they can find all my books on Amazon, all my books, some in Barnes & Noble, some in physical stores, because I'm with some mainstream publishers as well. But yeah, gmichaelhoff.com is the best way to reach me.
And guys, his information is the show notes. The one last question I'm going to throw out there, there's been throughout the podcast positivity. If anything goes on, okay, we got to look at the right way, blah, blah. Has there been a moment in the last 10 years, 5 years, or when there is a moment, I guess, that the positivity can't initially take control of the situation? What do you have to do to actually get your mind back on track, I guess?
That's a great question, by the way. That's a great question, because it's always going to happen. You get the most positive people in the world, and still you're going to get hit with something, right? Yeah. It starts with training your mind. And so then, when you get in a car now, do you now look when you drive, do you look down at the brake pedal? No, it's like second nature, right? Yeah. Everyone's like that who's driving. And the same thing has to be done with how your mindset is. And so it's through practice. And so the more you practice, the more you train your mind, then you can capture these thoughts or deal with emotionally, positively deal with an event that occurs quickly. Not that you won't have a reaction quickly, you might get whatever you flare, but then you'll catch yourself and then you ground yourself again. And I practice it just by always I started with I do meditation every single day. I highly, highly recommend people meditate. It's a way of, if you look at all the very successful people in the world today, they do forms of meditation. And I highly recommend I do twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. But meditation is a way that I'm able to I've trained my mind, just like you train your body, you go to the gym. The same thing goes for the mind. You have to train your mind every day in order for it to be kind of sharp and on edge. And then it's just repetitive. And then eventually, you train your mind, you've shifted your thoughts, and then you can capture that negativity right when it's there, and then get rid of it, reframe the situation you're in, and move on. I'm very, very aware now of when something happens that, like, okay, I might react to one way, and then I just quickly turn it around. I do not want to be controlled by that. And we do, man, we surrender. God, we surrender ourselves. We were talking about that before we jumped on about, giving our emotional state over to somebody else, right? And that's what happens when we get angry. And when we get angry or upset or distraught, that's like, control yourself. That's as simple as that. That's the hallmark of a mature person, is the ability to control your emotional state and do things calmly. Not to say that you're not upset inside, but emoting too much kind of takes away people's confidence in you as a leader and things like that. I don't know. It's just training. I think meditation's really helped me out over the years, that I'm able to now capture and deal with those events quickly. Not that I don't have my moments, but I transition through those really fast, really quickly.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Michael, for being here. Hopefully everyone listening got some great information. I mean, positivity, have a game plan, meditation. I mean, I think a lot of key takeaways for someone in their teens compared to someone in their 40s, 50s, 60s. So thank you guys. Please subscribe, please share, and go find Michael. Bye, everyone.